Last time we talked a little about important sources of protein and fats. Now I'd like to continue with facts about fat and some common nutritional myths. Let me start with my personal weight loss story. Like many people, I've struggled to lose weight and be healthy. I topped the scales at 265 pounds. I'm happy to report that I'm 195 pounds now, and I feel good, and I'm in the best shape of my life. But I grew up in a time when we were told that portion control and willpower, or lack thereof, were what made us fat. The low-fat diet was the mantra, along with the thinking that eating fatty foods makes you fat. All these ideas came from the government, so how could they not be true? In fact, these recommendations came from the FDA's dietary guidelines. And in fact, these were not based on any scientific evidence, zero. In 1968, the Senate appointed George McGovern to chair a select committee on nutrition and human needs, whose original mandate was to examine the problem of hunger in the United States. This committee, and Mr. McGovern especially, was instrumental in the federal government's promotion of the low-fat diet. Their focus shifted from hunger and the poor to chronic disease and diet. Mr. McGovern and the committee became convinced that Americans were not only eating too much, but were also eating the wrong foods. This committee's 1977 report was titled Dietary Goals for the United States, and it promoted increased carbohydrate intake, reduced fat consumption, along with less sugar and salt. They recommended that Americans eat more fruits, vegetables, whole grains, poultry, fish, and less meat, eggs, and high-fat foods, and that we should substitute non-fat for whole milk. Now, there were critics in the medical and scientific community who argued about the proposed dietary guidelines. Facing pressure from many, but especially the food industry, they reissued their report later that same year after changing cholesterol recommendations and wording from the negative, such as reduce fat consumption, to choose meats and fish that will reduce saturated fat. By the 1980s, food producers realized that low fat could provide profits. So they replaced the fat with sugar in the processed foods, leading to the snack wells phenomenon. That's when low-fat foods have as many calories as the high-fat versions. The popularity of the low-fat diet led to increased consumer demand and cheaply made, highly processed sugary foods, which filled the grocery store shelves. Now, several studies started to appear that seemed to support the notion of decreased incidence of heart disease by lowering fat and cholesterol in the diet. The USDA released the Food Pyramid in 1992, and it too supported the ideology of low fat. The American Heart Association launched its own low-fat campaign in 1988, and in an attempt to raise money and promote better health, it started the Heart Healthy seal of approval for foods, while companies paid to label their foods with the AHA seal of approval. One problem was quickly very evident. Fresh foods were not labeled with the seal, suggesting that processed foods were the heart healthiest. More than 55 companies participated, and over 600 products were approved, many which were snack and cereal products, including Kellogg's Frosted Flakes, Fruity Marshmallow Krispies, and low-fat Pop-Tarts. Sounds pretty healthy, huh? With so many professional groups and others embracing the low-fat diet, it was quietly forgotten that the basis of the low-fat diet had never undergone the scientific rigor which was customary. Well, perhaps it was because the recommendations seemed like common sense. If you eat fat, you'll get fat. Nothing could be further from the truth. Sugar, the real culprit behind the obesity epidemic, was for the moment the victor. Now think about this. If the low-fat diet was recommended for weight loss and prevention of heart disease, then why has it failed miserably? We're now in the midst of a long-standing obesity epidemic, along with rising rates of heart disease, despite the public's acceptance and despite the availability of low-fat products in the market. Do I believe it's our fault? Heck no, it's not our fault. Remember what I said earlier? A calorie is not a calorie. 500 calories of Coca-Cola is supposed to be equal to 500 calories of spinach? When was the last time you saw somebody eat 500 calories of spinach? And when was the last time you saw someone become obese by eating too much spinach. It doesn't make sense. There are many physiological factors involved, but in a nutshell, your body stores fat because of excess carbohydrate intake, not because you consume too much dietary fat. I'll break down this metabolic process in another video. Until then, stay safe